This is video 2 on the Parable of Lazarus, and as we mentioned in our first video, the story is very theologically rich. One of the more striking elements of the story of Lazarus is how much he suffers in the injustice that he endures, and that brings up some really important questions, some of which we're going to try to answer in this video. The most obvious question is why? Why does Lazarus endure the injustice and suffering that he does? And this story actually does not answer that question. It does, however, tell us how Lazarus handled injustice and suffering. Well, at least it implies it. Because one of the curious things about the story is that we never hear Lazarus' voice. I mean, when you think about it, when the rich man is in Hades pleading with Abraham to be relieved of his suffering, and even when he asked for Lazarus to be sent to talk to his brothers, it would have been a perfect time for Lazarus to intercede and tell Abraham, hey man, don't help this guy out because he was really mean to me, and I'm certainly not going to help his brothers because they were also mean to me, or something along those lines. It's a perfect time for Lazarus to say something. And yet, there's a very stark contrast between the rich man who lived in and for wealth and is very vocal in his suffering, and Lazarus, who both in his suffering and his triumph is silent. Now, let me be very clear. I am not saying that silence is how we always deal forevermore with suffering and injustice. There's certainly a time to be vocal about those things. But the silence in the story is a detail that we really need to pay attention, along with another detail that happens as the rich man and Abraham are interacting while he's in Hades, because he wants Lazarus to be sent to warn his brothers, and Abraham's response to that is that they have the prophets and Moses. And if they don't listen to them, then they're not going to listen to someone who even comes from the grave. I think there's a very strong implication here about silence and being able to hear the voice of God. If you imagine the life of the rich man, he was always partying, having feasts all the time, living in and for wealth, and he never had time to really listen to the voice of Moses and the prophets. And yet the implication is that Lazarus, in his suffering and his silence, was able to. See, as Christians, we have a big part to play in addressing matters of injustice and suffering in this world, and sometimes even our own. And we are going to get our hands busy working on those things, and yet there's a huge lesson for us to learn here, that one very powerful way that we can address injustice and suffering with is by being silent and really seeking the voice of God.